As the father nears the end of his instructions to his son, it seems that part of his concern is to make sure that he really feels all of the temptations that are going to come his way. We notice that as we approach the end of these lessons, like when we got to lesson number 8, it seems the father was concerned with his son feeling the danger of taking another man's wife. So he encourages him, when you feel the temptation there, redirect that temptation and enjoy the delight of your own wife, right? Don't choose the delight of a married woman when you could choose the delight of your own woman. And then we got to lesson 9, and here he's really focusing on the dangerous nature of adultery, right? Don't go down that path. You're going to encounter the burned husband, and he's going to be out to absolutely destroy you. But here, in this final lesson, really taking up all of Proverbs chapter 7, the father's advice to the son is focusing in on that moment of seduction in and of itself. He's wanting the son to know that as he goes through life and he begins to encounter various things, various women perhaps who catch his eye, he needs to make sure that he watches out for seduction. In fact, if we're going to attach a title to this lesson, I think we could say it's just that: steer clear of seduction. It seems that the father's purpose here is to make his son feel the woman's seduction, so says Waltke, yet in such a way that she becomes utterly repugnant to him. He wants to present this woman in such a way that she is real and he can almost feel her temptation. And because of that, I think we may find Proverbs chapter 7 is perhaps a little more explicit than other sections we've read or other lessons we've read. But the reality is the father wants his son not just to hear about the temptation, but actually to feel it or to sense it himself. And so we do meet one character as this lesson progresses. While we have met this character before, she's really provided in more detail. It's the forbidden woman. In earlier lessons, we've been told that the woman speaks and her speech is sweet. We've been told that she's very, very beautiful, but we haven't really heard anything from her or noticed much about her. Here in this lesson, though, she becomes a very active character as the father begins to prepare the son for what he is about to face. And so he says in Proverbs chapter 7, "My son, obey my words. Treasure my commands, keep my commands, and live, and guard my instructions as you would the pupil of your eye." Perhaps your translation says, as the apple of your eye. The word there for pupil is this Hebrew word for man with a diminutive ending on the end, or a way of saying a little something. So it's essentially saying like the little man of your eye. I think the idea here is that when you stand close to somebody and you have a conversation with them, you look into their eyes, right there in the center black pupil of their eye, you might be able to see a reflection of yourself, a little man, if you will. And I think what the father is saying here is, you hold my instruction, you protect it like you might protect this part of your body, that you might guard it and keep it from any harm or any danger. That's what you are supposed to do. Tie them to your fingers. Write them on the tablet of your heart. This sounds a little bit like Deuteronomy chapter 6, the Shema to Israel, that they are supposed to take these things and bind them on their hands, write them on their foreheads, write them on the doorposts, on their gates, all of these things. You're supposed to provide reminders all around you. It seems that the hand was frequently a mnemonic device in ancient Israel. In fact, I wonder if that's even one of the reasons that there are 10 commandments, right? The 10 principles of covenant relationship, or the 10 commandments, are perhaps numbered as 10 because that's how many fingers most people have. And it makes it easy to remember when we can just number them off. So I think what the father is telling the son here is make sure you tie them on your fingers. Make sure that you write them. You engrave them like you would a stylus on a wax tablet or something. You engrave them on the tablet of your heart. You say to wisdom, you are my sister. I think this idea of eye and fingers and heart all together suggests really the whole personality. You make sure that you involve all of yourself in the remembering of my words. And then you say to wisdom, you are my sister. Sister is a word we use for family relationships, and it was that way as well in the ancient world. But also we find something a little bit surprising. The word sister, it seems, was a way of talking about someone's lover. In fact, in the Song of Songs, we see several times that the lover calls his beloved. He says, my sister, you are my beloved, my sister. This was the case in Egypt as well. We have lots of records of people talking about someone they love and calling them sister. Now, I don't think this means they were an actual sister. I think it's a way of talking about someone who is close to you or very dear to you. Now, maybe this sounds strange for us, but of course, in our culture, we have a tendency to call our lover baby or something like that. And so every culture has its own strange words that it uses for love relationships. And I think that's the case here. And so what the father is saying is you tell wisdom, hey, you are my sister. You are my close lover. And you call understanding your relative. If you do this, she will keep you from a forbidden woman, a wayward woman with her flattering talk. Wisdom then becomes your protection from this woman that you're going to face as you go throughout life. Now, then, we begin the lesson in full, the teaching in full, as the father begins to describe something he's witnessed. He says, at the window of my house, I looked through my lattice. It seems that perhaps there's a balcony or perhaps just an upper window with some sort of lattice on it. He's looking out from it. He's observing the street below. And then he begins to notice a scene unfolding before his eyes. Verse 7, I saw among the inexperienced, I noticed among the youths. Now, there's a couple things to note here. First, this is the youth. He's someone who is young, a young man, someone who is perhaps not a small child, but someone who is grown of marriageable age, it seems, and he's on his way through the city. But he is among the inexperienced. This word for inexperienced is used several times throughout the book of Proverbs, and it's not necessarily or inherently a negative word. It just means someone who is simple or someone who is naive. It's someone who has not yet made a decision about which path he is going to take in life. And so perhaps even though the youth here has been instructed by the father and the mother at home, he is now on his way and he's a bit naive. He's a bit inexperienced when it comes to life, and that's not going to go well for him. There is a young man lacking sense. Here, he is lacking. It's a similar form of the word used in Psalm 23, verse 1. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, or I lack nothing, some translations say. The idea of lack and not lacking when the Lord is my shepherd. The idea here is that the young man lacks sense. It actually says he is lacking of heart. The Hebrew word here for heart. I don't think this means that he's lacking feeling, that he is heartless and he doesn't care about anything at all. He's a man without any emotions. I actually think that's very much not the case as we move through this section when we see how easy he is to seduce. No, I think the reality is the heart is the place where you think, where you process information, where you make decisions. And this young man is lacking in sense. He's lacking in the ability to think through this. And he is about to squander all of the training that he has received. And so, verse 8, crossing the street near her corner, he strolled down the road to her house. Now, this young man will be a victim here, but he is also setting himself up for it. He takes some very unwise steps here. He's going at a time of day when he perhaps should not be going. He's walking along uncommitted, and I think There's a suggestion in the book of Proverbs that one should make a commitment before they even enter into the city, which path you're going to take. And now he's choosing to go near her house, walking down the road. And it seems from the verses that follow that there's no question who this woman is. Everybody knows this woman and what she is like. At twilight, in the evening, in the dark of the night. The darkness is a veil for this woman's seduction. And so we finally meet her. Verse 10. A woman came to meet him, dressed like a prostitute. Now, we don't exactly know what prostitute's garb would look like, but from some other places in Scripture, we could infer that perhaps she was wearing some sort of a veil. And so she comes out, she's perhaps veiled, and she's there in the street with him. But then it says that she has a hidden agenda. In Hebrew, it says she's wily of heart. And I think the idea here is that she's perhaps guarded in her mind. The problem is just one of the many problems, but one of the problems, right, is that her motives, her real motives, her true motives are her secret. Even her lovers don't know her. Verse 11, she is loud and defiant. Her feet do not stay at home. She's loud and boisterous, and she's on the move. She's always looking to fulfill her desires. Again, if you recall from a few sessions ago, it's possible that feet is a sexual euphemism. And so perhaps it's saying that she is ready for love. And now, verse 12, she's in the street. Now she's in the squares. She lurks at every corner. The word there for lurk is the word lie in wait that is used elsewhere in Scripture to talk about predators. That's exactly what she's doing. And so she's there out in the street. He just so happens to be walking by, and it's an opportune moment. Verse 13, she grabs him and she kisses him. Wow, what a woman. That she just grabs this guy as he's walking by and she kisses him, and then she says brazenly to him, or perhaps she tells him a bold-faced lie. And she says, I've made fellowship offerings. Today I've fulfilled my vows. Now there's some debate about why she says this. Some people think perhaps she's suggesting that she has offered her sacrifices so she's right with God, and now she could engage in other sorts of activities. I wonder, though, if what's actually happening here is she's saying, I have made my peace offering or my fellowship offering. You know what happens when you make a peace offering? You get meat to eat. You bring your animal to the tabernacle or the temple. It seems in the Old Testament, you make your fellowship offering, your peace offering, and then you get a portion of that meat to eat yourself. So it seems, perhaps in this world of ancient Israel, where meat is really a rarity, it's not something that anybody is consuming on a regular basis, this woman looks at the young man and says, hey, I've got meat at home. I mean, what are we going to do? Just let it go to waste? All of this meat, we're just going to let it spoil? Why don't you come and enjoy this great food with me? It has to be eaten anyway. You might as well come inside. So I came out, verse 15, to meet you. Notice the temptation of significance here. This young man, inexperienced, naive, walking through the city at night, suddenly meets a woman who has been looking just for him. And whether or not he feels significant or important in his own life, this woman is telling him, I've been looking for you. You are the one that I wanted. I've searched for you, and now I have found you. It's good to be wanted, it seems, and so perhaps he's enticed. Verse 16, she goes on, I've spread coverings on my bed, richly colored linen from Egypt. I've perfumed my bed with myrrh and aloes and cinnamon. Now we have the temptation of desire. Lots of sensual delights are mentioned in these verses. And if we notice, as we're tracking through all of this, she's appealing to all of his senses. Sight, right, with her appearance, the sound as she calls out for him, perhaps even calls out his name. She grabs him and kisses him. Touch, right? We've got these smells that are coming from her house. These very rare spices that are frequently associated with love, as they occur frequently in the Song of Songs. Next, we're going to experience taste. All of these senses together are enticing the youth, enticing the son to come along with her. And so, verse 18, come, let's drink deeply of love-making until morning. Let's feast on each other's love. Now is the real invitation. Come have sex. The invitation is not just one hour together or just a few moments of lovemaking. No, she says, come, we'll do it until morning. This means all night long. Now, perhaps the youth is starting to wonder, but we can't do that. Won't your husband be home later? And so she dismisses these as well. Verse 19, my husband isn't home. He went on a long journey. He took a bag of silver with him and will come home at the time of the full moon. In other words, the man's gone. You have nothing to worry about. You don't have to stress out about him coming home. You have nothing to be concerned about. He won't catch us. Bruce Waltke says, if this woman is right, then the whole basis of biblical ethics is undermined. Deed and consequences are not connected. But of course, the Father wants to remind us, as he has several times throughout the book of Proverbs so far, deed and consequence are connected. You may feel that in this moment you're able to separate your deed from the consequence of that. You're able to separate the pleasure from the result of that choice that you have made. But the Father reminds us there is no escaping the consequences of our choices. And so, verse 21, she seduces him with her persistent pleading. She lures him with her flattering talk. He follows her impulsively. He goes along with her temptation. I mean, it is hard to resist, it seems, when she's made such an offer like this, when she's laid it out in a way like this. Surely it's hard for him to escape. And yet, again, we can trust the Father to show us the beginning accurately, and we can also trust the Father to show us the end accurately. And that's what he does next. He says, like an ox going to the slaughter, like a deer bounding toward a trap, until an arrow pierces its liver, like a bird darting into a snare. He doesn't know it will cost him his life. There is certain death. There is no escape here. And the Father makes it very clear to the Son, in this moment, there is no hope for this young man. He's going to a certain death. And so, now, sons, he says, listen to me. Pay attention to the words from my mouth. Don't let your heart turn aside to her ways. Don't stray on to her paths, for she has brought many down to death. Her victims are countless. Her house is the road to Sheol, descending to the chambers of death. It seems what the Father is trying to tell the Son here is to connect the dots. Pay attention to what I'm telling you, this picture that I'm painting for you, and connect the dots between the actions. Yes, the temptation might be strong. The seduction might be enticing, but connect the dots with where it leads. This will always lead to death. It is a highway to hell, and you must stay away. If you value your life, if you want to be like that bird who avoids the net, who avoids the trap, then you stay away from her way. Do not let your heart turn aside to her path. Don't even head down her street, because her way is a path to Sheol. You know, I think more and more in our culture, pornography is becoming a pretty standard reality. It's just something that everybody seems to expect everyone else to experience at one point or another. And I think probably more than we even realize, pornography is a pandemic that is sweeping through our country, through our world even. But the reality is pornography is seductive, and it is just as destructive as other forms of sexual immorality. It always has consequences. I think there's a word here for us in our culture to make sure that we're always connecting the dots between our actions and the consequences of those actions. If we're going to hear the words of the Father to the Son as words of God perhaps to us, then I think we need to hear these words. Make sure we connect the dots as well. Yes, we may be tempted to think that our choices don't matter, that our choices don't have consequence. But there are always consequences to our choices. And even if the consequence is veiled or hidden, it will always come. And so, as we seek to live wise lives under the lordship of Jesus Christ, may we become a people who, like the Father urges the Son, steer clear of seduction.